This is a live presentation of the type.
The Power Hours on the air, live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and thank you for joining us on this Monday evening. Super Bowl 57 is in the books, and what an interesting one it was, to say the least. And to start out, I think one thing that's not being talked a lot about, and realistically, we know about the penalty, and we'll get to that later, but how bad was just the sodding job? It blows my mind at how terrible they did at this to just get this prepared. And realistically, I don't know if it was a situation where the grass just wasn't prepared properly, or if it's a situation where you're just consistently looking at something and it's just not what it needed to be. So I kind of just chalk that one up to just a bad experience for something where you put something in and you're trying to test it. And that's kind of what it seems like what happened. So for my takeaway on the whole thing is, I don't think I've ever seen this turf tear away just that horribly ever in any of these Super Bowl games. And realistically, it just really blows my mind that just the amount of cleats that were changed in this game were just unreal. If you saw on the sidelines, it was just unbelievable. And the fact that just how badly that this was going for the team, that they were consistently changing cleats. There was no footing in a situation like that. It's really just laughable at that point. I would have to say, you really have to try and test things out. And, the biggest game on one of the biggest nights around the world, you're basically saying it was worth trying out, but at what risk? Players have consistently changed cleats. You're looking at a situation where there's just bad footing, and the turf was basically coming up and just did it. You saw at halftime, there were just maybe 30 guys running on the field to try and patch up those mistakes that were just coming up. So I think it's one thing that just didn't get a lot of discussion today. And realistically, there was a lot of talking points for the Super Bowl. So I definitely plan on talking about a few of those. So realistically, it's just interesting to me that you would try and test out a new type of turf, and it didn't even last throughout the game. Realistically, this is one of the reasons why you do see teams come into a situation where they're trying to basically just put turf down on the field and just trying to place it with artificial turf at that point. Because, if that's what you're going to get in the championship game, it's just laughable at this point. Because realistically, I think the NFL just kind of botched this one. If they knew this was going to be a situation where the grass was just not going to be in a situation where it was going to be usable or even have any kind of traction, I generally think that that's just failure on their part, and I hope that it's something that they can rectify. The only thing I can really even compare to would be like when Super Bowl 23 happened, and that turf was just dead. Literally, the vacuum system that sucked the rain off before the game basically dried the grass out and killed it. So, literally, it was coming up in just patches, and realistically, that's kind of what the field looked like to me last night. And I just hope that this is a new type of siding that they just try and put out and try and consistently just find a way to make it better. I think it's a failure of just massive proportions. You really can't try and test something out like that and just expect it to work. So, unfortunately, the one talking point that I had to get to, and I thought it was interesting to bring up, but I'm not going to waste any time. I'll just make sure everybody gets up on the show. Good seeing everybody on the feed. So we'll go ahead and get to our top news. And I definitely wanted to just say before we get started, unfortunately, Tighten Up Load won't be able to join us tonight. There's just some family issues right now, and that's understandable. It's one of those situations that just has to take care of, and it happens to all of us. So we just hope everything's all right, and we just hope that we can get it back on the show as soon as possible. So I'll just do the best I can with myself. But I got a lot to talk about, and I'm sure you definitely want to jump in and chime in, and that's what the show's about. I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to talk and put yourself up on the chat and make sure that your voice is heard on it. So realistically, we're going to talk about a lot of things tonight, and we'll not waste another minute getting to it. So let's jump into our top news. I'm Michael Bishop of the Power Hour, so let's get to it. And everything looks like it's just not working for me today. So I'll just have to try and just do my best if I can. So my apologies. I do apologize. So for Andy Reid, basically, one of the top things coming out before the game yesterday was, could this potentially be Andy Reid's last game? So I realistically thought if the Chiefs were somehow able to pull off the upset and get the win, that maybe Andy Reid just was kind of burned out. I mean, he's been with the organization for over a decade now, and realistically, it wouldn't surprise me. I do think you look at that kind of situation, guys just go into a situation they're comfortable. They build something special, but realistically, Andy Reid's in a good place. So I do think it's not off the table for him to leave. However, I do feel, especially with just some of the things that he was saying, I think it's very likely he could come back next year, but I'm not going to let him change his mind. And I say that because of this. There's situations on what's going on and what is just inevitably not happening. So I'm sorry, it looks like I'm having trouble. So can you all hear me? Unfortunately, I might be having some trouble tonight. So how about now? Hope I'm just not having a lot of luck tonight. All right, how about we'll try now. So hopefully that was able to work. So my apologies for that. Hopefully that's just some technical difficulties we're working out. So unfortunately, it just doesn't seem like it's my night, but I'm just going to forge through. So hopefully that'll get my screen back up. So just give me a minute. So all right, here we go. Sorry about the hold up, everybody. Hopefully this. But getting back to my point with Andy Reid, I do think that it's possible that he could retire. So I'm not ruling it out. Realistically, there's a lot going on. There's a situation where he probably feels there's not a lot that he has to accomplish anymore. He's basically going to walk into the Hall of Fame. I think it's a situation, does he want to hang around and continue doing what he's doing? And he seems happy and content with what he's doing. But I do think you kind of just have to ask yourself at some point, do you still have that kind of mindset to just get in the grind, just take care of business? And I think that he does in some ways, but realistically, his mind could be changed within like a matter of months. Maybe he's just not feeling it. And I definitely appreciate him just standing up for Eric Bieniemy, who's been going through the hiring cycle once again, and this will be his 5th hiring cycle. So I appreciate him pushing Bieniemy, basically saying that his game planning was a big part of why they won that game. So that kind of just pushes the narrative for me that maybe Bieniemy might be in line for the Kansas City job if Andy Reid decides to step down. And I think that'd be a perfect fit. You're not really changing anything. You're not really moving any personnel around. You have the same guys in place. Everybody's familiar with everybody. So I don't think that's a bad idea. But it's if Andy Reid feels like that he wants to come back. And for the most part, he seems anxious to come back. But like I said, people change their minds. Realistically, you look at a lot of situations going on. You look at a lot what's up in the air. And right now for Andy Reid, he's just living in the moment. Is it going to be a situation where he just sees himself feeling a lot different about the job in the next month or two? Well, that's going to be the big case, and we'll just figure that out as Andy Reid decides what to do in the offseason. And it appears the Colts have a new head coach candidate on the docket. As we saw yesterday, the Eagles' offensive coordinator has been highly touted as one of the potential candidates for taking in the Colts job. And I'm going to say, if you're a Colts fan, you should definitely have a sigh of relief right now. So it's funny to me for two reasons. Because first off, Jeff Saturday was being pushed nonstop throughout 3 different hiring cycles. And I would have to say that it just came to a point where Jim Irsay had a lot of his people jump up and try and get in his ear and say, look, we know you want to hire Jeff Saturday, but this will not go over well, especially with the fan base. And I already know that's basically what one of the conversations was. So I think the Colts really just kind of had to just wait and just try and figure out what they were going to do long term. And the best thing long term, especially if you're going to wait this long to hire a coach, it's not a problem to just wait for a guy, especially if they're deep in the playoffs. You know, Kansas City's had very viable candidates. They just haven't had time to be interviewed. Same with the Eagles. So now realistically, you have the Colts and the Cardinals at this point that are looking at potential candidates from the Eagles. So it's not a surprise to me at all. You know, especially when teams go on a stretch that they have, the Eagles have been very consistent in their offensive and defensive scheming. So you want to get guys that are good at their job. But the funny thing to me is that the Colts would reach to the Eagles twice. First time was when they got Frank Wright, hired him when he was the offensive coordinator. Now they're going after the next offensive coordinator for the Eagles, which is just apparently funny to me. So it seems like the Colts feel like that's a pretty good tree to pick from. Will it bear fruit? That's going to be an interesting question and scenario to take on. So I'm interested to see how the hiring process goes with that. But speaking of the Eagles, and of course the other team looking for hiring, the Arizona Cardinals are trying to pluck another assistant from the Eagles coaching staff. As it would appear, they're going after their defensive coordinator for the potential job opening. And I don't think it's a bad option right there. I think if you get the right offensive coordinator, defensive coordinators can succeed in this league. It's very rare, but they have to have a good work ethic. They have to know what they want to do long term, and they have to know that in coming into this setting, it's a situation where you don't feel like you're being forced to make a lot of tough decisions. Realistically, it's a good job to be going into. Now, I know Kyler Murray, there's a lot of headway and there's a lot of just interesting scenarios that have come up about his personality traits, which makes him difficult to work with from some indication. But I'm going to say this. If you're able to build around him properly, I think Kyler Murray can fit in a good system, especially with the right offensive coordinator. So I'm not ruling it out. It would be an interesting hire for the Cardinals to move forward with. I do, however, think realistically, if Eric Bieniemy has an opportunity to get interviewed for this job, I think that would fit him as well. So there's a lot of options there for the Cardinals. They've taken their time, just as the Colts have, and I think realistically it might pay off for both franchises, hopefully, if they feel they got the right guy in place. So, and the funny part is, if both candidates end up being hired, then the Eagles are basically starting from scratch. They're going out and trying to find a new defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator after their Super Bowl run. So that might change a lot of dynamics, especially going forward next season, how people view them. Can they find a right set of guys, especially trying to move forward and make that march back to the Super Bowl? Because unfortunately, as history's told us many times, teams that go to the Super Bowl and end up losing generally don't make it back. So that's another hurdle that the Eagles are going to have to continue to move forward on. But a lot of interesting coaching scenarios right now. We'll just wait and see how that goes. But also, looking at a lot of quarterback situations, the most intriguing one right now that doesn't involve Derek Carr is Aaron Rodgers. And the New York Jets have made no qualms about it. They want to go after Aaron Rodgers and potentially lock him down and get him to try and turn his franchise around for the very lack of quarterback skill that they've desperately needed. Now, I don't know what Aaron Rodgers wants to do. I don't know if he still feels good about his relationship with the Packers. I would have to think, just basically from what he said in certain interviews and just even from his body language in general, you're looking at a guy that's just kind of burned out. I might consider just saying that he would say, I'm looking for a change of pace. I need something fresh. I need a new dynamic. It's not really working out for me. And that's not surprising to say the least, if that's how he feels. But the Jets have made no mystery about it that they don't want to bring him in as their quarterback. So you go out, you hire Nathaniel Hackett, you bring in a situational offensive line that I think that they're going to end up being very busy in the NFL draft, but there could potentially be some trades around the works to try and get this money loosened up to try and take on his contract, which I think is going to be another big hurdle for the Jets to take over. And I guess I'm talking without sound again, so it's just not my night. So to just cut this short and make the conclusion about Rodgers, I think the Jets are pushing a little too hard with one guy that I don't think really has a lot of interest in New York. It's a big market. They're really a second banana. And that's just the hard truth about the New York Jets. There's not a lot of interest there. Besides, outside of their own fan base, they're really kind of just the punching bag, so to say. So I'm hoping it's a situation that Rodgers feels comfortable enough to just move on from the Packers. But also, it just has a Brett Favre kind of feel. And I realistically just think that if Rodgers moves on, I think he's better off going somewhere with a team that's maybe a little in a warmer situation. I don't know if he wants to continue playing where the weather's cold. He's done that throughout his career in Green Bay. So I think he might be trying to find something on the warm side. So it's potentially just a good situation and a good fit. So trying to find that is going to be the offseason question going forward. And of course, to finish it off, It seems that, of course, the Baltimore Ravens have their hands full with Lamar Jackson's contract or lack of contract. And I really think this is going to be one of the driving stories, and this is the quarterback story to watch. Now, we all know the Ravens are going to do their best and try and franchise tag him and force him to try and sign that, which would at least put him about at a $47 million franchise tag, which that handicaps their idea of what they want to do long term, especially when it goes out to try and find some viable free agent acquisitions that could potentially help Lamar Jackson move forward. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the trade value would be for him. And you have some people estimating the Ravens would probably end up with about 5 first-round picks. So I think that's realistic in terms of trying to get an MVP quarterback. But at the same time, it's like you say it out loud and it's insane, but it's potentially a move that could happen if somebody was desperate enough. And there's plenty of teams out there that feel they're a quarterback away or they're just one section away from trying to just get themselves into position to be a contender. So the real question is Baltimore willing to move their future QB and just sell the farm? That depends on how bad you really feel that he's going to change your dynamic of winning. Now, Lamar Jackson, at times he's a very efficient passer, and there's times where he just doesn't pass when you need him to. I feel he's perfectly flawed in some ways. And I realistically have to think that somebody's going to try and lowball the Ravens on this. And it's really probably a situation I think a lot of teams are going to feel they're going to have to try and move the needle for this kind of situation and gauge interest. The Ravens understand that Lamar Jackson potentially could be making around $50 million a year. And the guaranteed money is going to be pretty much north of whatever Deshaun Watson's contract was. So you're looking at about maybe $200 million plus. So in an investing kind of world, you look at the need of what you have, and Lamar Jackson is very much in high demand. Any team hungry for a quarterback, any team that feels that if they can get the right guy in their system, which Lamar Jackson can fit in a lot of systems. I do think with certain teams that he would work well with. And then there are other teams I feel it's a head scratcher. Now, one team I think that will come up, especially if Tua Tagovailoa isn't the answer for Miami, is Miami. I would have to say that Miami's been aggressive the last couple of years, and really they feel like they're a quarterback away. But the bigger question is, are the Ravens willing to make a trade with an AFC rival? Do the Dolphins want to get rid of that kind of capital? And are they willing to get rid of that kind of capital, especially knowing that this is not a guaranteed move? As much as the Ravens want and need, and I stress the word need, to get a deal done in place to keep Lamar Jackson happy, is it really worth the long-term headache? You're investing a huge amount of money into a quarterback that has an MVP to his name, but realistically, I haven't seen him do anything in the playoffs. And that's kind of a tough sell, especially the fact he's been in the league, over 5 years, and he hasn't excelled in any kind of playoff run whatsoever. They've either underachieved or they've been bounced early. So is it worth the risk? And I know a lot of Titans fans think that it could potentially be worth a risk, and I don't blame you. I mean, I'm kind of interested to see how that dynamic would work. Would he work well in a Tim Kelly offense? I think he could. Tim Kelly's has a very friendly offensive system that's beneficial to quarterbacks that are very mobile and have a good arm. And Jackson has both. So it's not out of question. But it's really trying to find the right price that's gauging enough for the Ravens to move the needle forward. And I have to figure that out because realistically, you're looking at a situation where these guys are going to be trying to shake down a lot of teams for a lot of valuable assets. And realistically, those are assets that teams could be using down the road. Is it fixable? Is it a workable situation? I think in some cases, and for the right teams, yes. But realistically, you're talking about giving away potentially maybe 4 to 5 first-round picks in some experts' opinion. So it'll be interesting going forward to see who wants to make that move, who feels that move's the best interest of this franchise going forward. And the Ravens are in the driver's seat. Realistically, they still have time to get a deal done. Do they feel that they're confident enough to get the deal done? Is what I think they need to be asking themselves. I really feel that the Ravens can lock a deal down, maybe long term, but they're going to have to move a few things and make a few things happen to make it a viable situation. So, interesting enough, the offseason hasn't even begun to be just one day old, and we're already getting to some pretty hot topics. All right, guys, I'm going to take a quick 30-second break. When we come back, Super Bowl 57, I'll break down what I liked, what I didn't like, and how I felt. Yes, that very play at the end of the game, did it or did it not affect the reputation of this game? I'm Michael Bishop with the Power Hour. We'll be back in 30. Here, live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I am having some pretty bad sound issues today, so my apologies for that. But guys, thanks for sticking with me. Just working out some tough stuff today, but it is what it is. I guess it's just I'm having a bad show, but I'm trying to work through it. So thank you for being patient with me. And as always, very happy to have everybody in the chat. Shout out to Lou, Man, and Mom. You guys are phenomenal. You give a lot of great comments. So, I'm very grateful and very happy for the people that continue to support our show. And, I really just kind of thought today, it's just crazy that this is my first full year finishing up as a member of the Titan Upload Network. And I'm just truly grateful for the fact that, I've been given this opportunity with these amazing men that I get to work with every day and be a part of something special that I know is going to grow and continue to be bigger than what I could potentially hope it would be, or any of us for that matter. So it's important that I just make sure that you guys know I appreciate everything that you do. I appreciate all the hard work that's put in on everybody's end. And especially, I give a shout out to the fans, of course. You guys make this possible. You're the reason why I enjoy doing this. You're the reason why I continue to do this. And I mean, we're going to keep putting shows out for you. We're going to keep putting content out. It's the off season, but of course for us, that's a big season that we have to start taking more serious, because that's when news gets interesting. That's when moves shake. That's all the good stuff. So I thank you very much for everything that you contribute. And I'm very grateful that you come and watch the show every Monday. So thank you so much. I really appreciate everything that you make me feel like this show is always going to be my priority to give you my best every day. And I thank you all. So sorry for getting all mushy and everything, but I just definitely wanted to give everybody their roses today. It's really the season finale show for me. So I definitely kind of just feel like this whole year flew by. It had a lot of ups, really a lot of downs, especially the last 7 weeks. But I mean, I got a lot of ideas. I've got a lot of energy that I'm getting ready to just start harnessing and put in the right direction. So, this season's over with, and it was an unfortunate, disappointed one in some ways, but realistically, you know, being a part of the Titan Upload Network family, it really means a lot to me. And it really means a lot that, even though Titan Upload couldn't join the show tonight, I'm just very grateful that he extended the offer to me and just brought me into the fold. And it just means that I can actually just kind of grow and be myself and just make content and do it on a bigger scale. And that's really what I want to do. I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to participate in the show and watch the show. And that's just the goal. It's just to make a bigger, better show for you, the audience, and for future audience members as well. So I thank you all for that. And of course, guys, don't forget, if you love the show, help it grow, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok at the Power Hour 615. And of course, we're always a member of the Titan Upload Network. Don't forget to follow all your Titan Upload Network favorites, whether it be Titans for Life, Titans Rossi, Titan Upload, Ryan Harris of the Jump Pass podcast, and of course, Draft Brian, who is working tenaciously hard to get a lot of draft analysis ready for us, because the draft is mere months away, and I'm really excited to see what he's going to bring to the table. So we got a lot of balls up in the air, and we're juggling a lot of things. So it's really going to be a fun off season. So make sure you stay tuned. All right, guys, let's go ahead and jump into it. Super Bowl 57 in the books. And as of now, Patrick Mahomes, I think, has put himself in the top tier of quarterbacks. Realistically, I will say he's the face of the NFL now. Patrick Mahomes has separated himself from the pack. And with Tom Brady gone, and it's no disrespect to Aaron Rodgers and his legacy, but I look at the quarterbacks that come into this league and who are excelling at this point. And right now, Patrick Mahomes is right at the tip top, and it's not even close. The consistency point here is I look at what teams are trying to do in the long term of things. And in this Super Bowl, it was really just a telling tale of two teams that matched up perfectly in just about all categories. I mean, the similarities coming into this game, I really felt this was one of the tougher Super Bowls I've had to try and make a prediction over, because each part of what this team has, from a standpoint of whether it be defense, offense, special teams, they're very similar. Philadelphia having a great defense, Kansas City countered back with having a good defense as well. Both offenses, you had a solid offensive lines. You have playmakers. You have two quarterbacks, one that's already elite and one that's becoming elite. But I have to ask myself this, especially knowing that when the game came on, it really played out about how I thought it would. The defense from the Eagles side basically went after Patrick Mahomes. They made him uncomfortable. They made the right adjustments, and they kept their foot on the gas pedal. That's what they needed to do. But realistically, the Chiefs were never out of it. And it showed, especially in the second quarter, after the recovered fumble for a touchdown occurred, the Chiefs were still in this thing. But realistically, it was just concerning because the second quarter was really a bad quarter for the Chiefs offensively. I kind of had my doubts because, especially after the injury that occurred to Patrick Mahomes, you just kind of had the sense where it's like, man, the air kind of just got let out of the balloon. And it's kind of just disappointing because I didn't want to see this kind of just end up this way. You don't want to see the best players get hurt and then not finish the game. And then you just kind of hit cruise control at that point if you're the Eagles. But here's now what separates Patrick Mahomes and building his legacy. The fact he comes back battling a high ankle sprain, potentially re-injuring it. He comes out in the second half and dominates. Mahomes only had one incomplete pass. Every other throw he made in the second half was complete. Philadelphia couldn't stop him. They couldn't stop him from putting the ball where he needed to put it. He went out and put on a clinic at how to dominate a defensive secondary because realistically, the Eagles had no answer. And as much trouble as Mahomes gave that secondary, here's the shocking part. The defensive line came into this game for the Eagles with 70 sacks this year. They led the NFL. The closest second team was right around 40. So this defensive front had dominated, and it became evident they couldn't get to him. Mahomes was in the pocket, and he had no trouble moving around. He had no trouble finding his receivers. Give the offensive line their roses. And to all Titans fans, that's a selling point there at how important an offensive line is to dominating in this league. Now, it can be built through different ways. You can draft. You can sign free agents. You can find guys in lower parts of the draft, or you can even find guys as undrafted free agents. The point is, the offensive line was a key factor here in Kansas City's win. Patrick Mahomes doesn't win that Super Bowl unless that offensive line performs. Now, that being said, I've got to address the elephant in the room. And we all knew this was coming. Now, the penalty that occurred, I know that's the deflating point, and I definitely want to hear y'all's take on that. I want to make sure that you get your take in and how you feel about the penalty. Do you thought it was a fair penalty? Did you hate it? Do you think it spoiled what was already a good game? I mean, realistically, it's moments like that that just kind of just ruin something that's really just special at that moment. And I see it as this. It's like seeing a really great movie with a really horrible ending. And that's how I see it. I didn't like that it was called, but I get why it was called. It's really hard to defend somebody getting their jersey grabbed, especially when you know they've already moved out of the field of play. And I mean, there's going to be different opinions about it. And Lvii chimes in, it wasn't fair, his opinion, and that they should play. And I agree. I agree in that sentiment. But I mean, the hard thing is, Lvii, the human element's always going to have a hand in like messing things up. And this year in the NFL, it's been really difficult, especially now that a lot of people have been talking conspiracy theory or the script or the NFL scripted. Ooh, it's all hoax. Well, let's just be honest. Another situation is after the NFL basically cleared a lot of these gambling sites, people are like more paranoid now than ever that it's realistically the NFL trying to throw games. But let's sit down and be realistic about this at first. I can't say for sure that NFL officials aren't going to make mistakes. They do every year. This year's been particularly bad. I'm not going to deny that. But I will point out some things, especially in a sense of this game, where there were things that made a difference. Now, let's start with the basic ones. First off, the turf. Guys were losing their footing. You're changing cleats consistently. Both teams had like piles of cleats right around their bench area. So trying to run on the field was a problem. So I'll take that into consideration. Second off, you had the fumble recovery for a touchdown. That changed the entire damn dynamic going forward in the game. So I really think that just charged the Chiefs up and got them motivated to just hang around. Because realistically, in the first quarter, they weren't doing anything. The defense was doing a damn good job of keeping Patrick Mahomes at bay. They were forcing them to run the ball, and they were trying to force Mahomes out of the pocket to get him uncomfortable. And for the most part, the defensive did. Now, if they could have got him on the ground and caused a few sacks, that probably would have changed the dynamic as well. And the final one I have to bring up because I think it's also a big part. Kansas City's special teams have been phenomenal this year. And I think it was a huge part, especially in winning the game. If Tooney doesn't run back that punt for right at the 5-yard line, then we're looking at an entirely different game. And to me, I think that you have to take those into consideration with what was already transpiring. So there were opportunities that the Eagles could have taken to put themselves in a better position. So teams, in a team sense of that spirit and in that mindset, I have to look at that. If you have opportunities to try and get the game out of reach, do it. And really, these potential 3 things hurt a lot of momentum for the Eagles. And I don't like the micromanagement of the game back in the day. That was a catch. And I mean, the game's changed. The game's faster. Especially on both catches of the Eagles where they reviewed those. One, the ball literally had about 14 different views you could look at. One of them, it just came out as soon as his arm hit the ground. Now, the second one, it was really just a matter of just was he in bounds. I don't think there was more a problem of if he maintained the ball. I very well thought that was another situation that was maintainable. I'm fine if they take the time to get the call right. In some circumstances, it's worth it, especially if it doesn't affect the game. Now, the one with the last call where you have defensive holding, don't like the call. Not a fan of it, but I get it. I mean, it doesn't matter what happens. I mean, most players will tell you, if you grab another guy's jersey, that's pretty much his flag. I don't like the call. I don't think it helped the game at all. Would it have changed the entire dynamic? I can't give a real answer for that, but I do know it got called, and that's all there was to it. Anytime you grab a shirt, they're going to throw a hanky on the field. That's just how they do it. But my thoughts aside, I definitely want to know how everybody felt about the game with everything aside. Do you think it was a good game? Do you think that there could be more improvements? Do you feel that despite even just the controversy at the end, if we want to call it that, can they improve? And I hope that's something, especially once the spring meetings come into place where the owners sit down and talk about this stuff, that we can finally just address some of the things that have just not been right in the NFL. And I mean, officiating is one of them. Let's just be honest. Roger Goodell is going to defend the officiating for mainly the biggest reason. He's going to defend the shield. That's his job. It's to defend the NFL and make the NFL look good. And that's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of the commissioners in these leagues are former lawyers, because lawyers know how to talk. They know how to make and give the right answers. May not sound right to us, may not be the right answers we want to hear, but the real reason is it's appeasing and it's a selling point for Roger Goodell to sell the league. That's his job. But realistically, you got to find a solution for the problems, especially when the problems are only getting worse. But all that aside, I definitely will say this because I feel before the whole end of the game scenario happened, this was a really good game. This was turning out to be a really good Super Bowl. Both teams were still in this thing. And that's what's really disappointing. We really kind of felt that this could go and be a really solid Super Bowl. And it comes down to a call like this that kind of basically just lets the air out of the tires. And as Lou, man, you bring up, it's hard to just watch, and especially in these situations, you don't want them to micromanage these situations. You want the guys to play. You want them to go out and make the plays. But it's really a double-edged sword. I mean, realistically, there's a lot of scenarios I could say, what if it backfired? I mean, would we feel the same way if it wasn't called? I think that's also just something of kind of perception that you have to take into consideration. And I'm not saying or calling anybody out on it. I'm just putting out my 2 cents saying, realistically, nobody's going to be happy with any call, especially on an opposite side of it. I would have to feel if they missed it, then you're going to get the same thing just in reverse. But going forward and looking at these two teams, Kansas City has built a dynasty. And if Andy Reid hangs around, they're going to continue to roll with it because they got the right guys in place. They've got their quarterback. They've got a solid defense. Kansas City's a problem. They're going to be a problem. I wouldn't be shocked if they repeated. That's how good I think they are. And even if Andy Reid does leave, I think Eric Bieniemy could just fill in that role and do just as well. Andy Reid stepped up for him. Andy Reid said, we won the game because of the offensive line, Patrick Mahomes, and Eric Bieniemy's game planning. So I tip my hat to Andy Reid for that. It takes a lot of guts, especially seeing the guy that you've had on your staff for nearly 5+ years get passed over for every NFL job that's out there. So I don't think that's out of the possibility of him taking over. That'd be an interesting take. But the Chiefs, they're not going anywhere. Get used to them winning their division. Get used to them getting to the conference championship. You want to stop them, you got to beat them. And that's just the main takeaway from it. Now on the Eagles side, there's a lot of questions going on in the offseason. Jalen Hurts. I think after this game, you really have a lot of people that are just saying that he needs to get paid an extension because they've got their guy. And I think Jalen Hurts has the potential to be an MVP going down the road. I really think it's important, especially that they continue to bring in and draft the right guys. The Eagles are doing all the right things. And I think if they can hang on this offseason and sign the guys they need to and potentially get their offensive line healthy again, they could go back, but it's not easy for the team that loses the Super Bowl. It hardly is ever easy. So the Eagles are going to have a harder road just because historically the Super Bowl loser never really comes out and goes back. And there's a lot of things that kind of just keep that from happening. The 49ers are going to be around still. Minnesota's a decent team. I just don't know if their quarterback play is going to elevate them to the next level. I mean, the Cowboys could potentially be a problem down the road. And realistically, you're probably looking at a whole bunch of other different teams that are going to elevate themselves into a different situation. I do think, however, having a quarterback of that stature and that elite status right now, and I will say Jalen Hurts is elite, that helps their cause. So if I am in the Eagles' shoes, realistically, your best bet, lock down your guy, keep him there. And Lou Man says 32 teams in the NFL. The team I don't like the most is Kansas City. And that's fine, Lou Man, but I mean, it's like the start of every dynasty. You don't know who's going to go and be the next one. You hope it's your team. And usually it's one of the teams that's kind of been down and out for a while. I mean, let's be honest. Nobody saw the Patriots coming. They've been to 2 Super Bowls and they lost them. You know, it's a rolling wheel. Somebody's always going to be on top every different situation. And asking who our quarterback will be next year, oh, Lou, man, that's going to be another show for another day because I would have to go, pull a 2-hour shift on this show. So believe me, we got all off season to talk about that. I promise you we'll get into it, but I have many, many answers for that, and I kind of plan on spacing them out. So I don't want to give you too much. All right, guys, we'll take a quick 30-second break. When we come back, we'll get into closing time and wrap everything up. And as we wrap it up, got to let you know what's going to be happening in the future. And a lot of big things are coming up. So excited about it and hoping to bring you along the ride with everything that's coming up. So I'm Michael Bishop of the Power Hour. We'll be back in 30. Power Hour is on the air, live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and thank you for joining me on this Monday evening. We had some bugs, but we worked it out, and I think it turned out to be a pretty good show. Unfortunately, I guess it's just where I'm on a later show tonight. Maybe everything's just kind of acting a little clunky, but, I'm glad we were able to work out the sound issue, so we were definitely lagging a little bit tonight, so that's on me. So I'll have time to get all that fixed when the next show rolls around. But I'm glad everybody came in on the show and watched and put in their 2 cents. So always glad to get a good show in to finish out strong on Monday. So let's go ahead and get everything wrapped up in a nice little bow, guys. It's one of my favorite segments, and we call it Closing Time.
Closing time.
Good night, losers.
And to start out with closing the show, I got to bring up this, and I don't want to talk about this, but this really is just one of those things that I shouldn't be making a discussion about, because last year I went into a huge spiel of why Devin Hester should have been in the Hall of Fame his first go around. And the fact that I'm bringing up a second time around is just a football injustice. And I know a lot of people are going to say he only played one position, that he was basically on special teams, and special teams guys, it's a lot harder to get in. But let me digress. Devin Hester changed the way the kickoffs were done. There's a reason why they moved the football to where it is now when they do kickoffs. And it wasn't to just eliminate basically the principle of trying to get players from not being hurt. That was one of them. The other one was, they were trying to cap a lot of these guys from trying to run back into these situations, because most guys were kind of just getting hit. But Devin Hester was an exception to the rule. You can move it back. he'd still find a way to run it back. Deion Sanders said this, and I agree with him 100%. You didn't go to the bathroom when Devin Hester was on the field because you knew something exciting could happen. When your very presence on the field can change the outcome of a game, that's the very definition of who Devin Hester is. That's the very definition of his work ethic. That's the very idea of why he should be in the Hall of Fame. He literally owns every returning record in the books. And if it's not everyone, it's damn near close. I shouldn't have to be making this discussion. This shouldn't be a debate. This should be something that should have been finalized long ago. And yet here I am discussing why he's missed out yet again. It's infuriating. And realistically, I've never been just so pissed off about something, about anyone not getting in. And look, I get the Steve McNair argument. I get the Eddie George argument. I'm going to pull for those guys to get in. And I mean, there's things that are going to keep them from getting in. But I think eventually it'll work out in the long term of things. They've got to pay their dues, basically from a time standpoint. But Devin Hester is not one of those players that needs to pay their dues. He's done everything to make this position more exciting. He was exciting at this position. And I'm severely disappointed in the NFL for turning their back on him for a second year. And I don't want to do this again for a third year. I do not want to have this discussion again. So I'm over it. This is the last time I'm bringing it up. Devin Hester must be in the Hall of Fame next year. There's no argument. It is a must. And to cap it all off, of course, we got to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl halftime show. I'll just be honest. I felt a little underwhelmed. And, you know, Rihanna, I enjoy her work. She's got some good songs. I thought the show, for the most part, it had a lot of interesting dynamics. The platform stage was interesting, but I just felt like there was just more that they could have done. And I'm not blaming her. I don't know if she had a lot of say in who she wanted to bring in or any of that stuff. I just kind of felt underwhelmed. And really, it could have been a better show if you had just a surprise guest, or maybe you had just someone just do something that was unexpected. But I guess in the sense of everything, it wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. You know, I think everybody's going to just have their opinion. And most of the opinions I've seen, everybody's either high or they're low on it. But I mean, I wasn't disappointed. You know, it was an interesting show. We all found out Rihanna's pregnant again. Congratulations. So, you know, it's not the kind of halftime show that people rave about. You know, last year I raved about it because it meant a lot to me. The music meant a lot to me. And I definitely put it in top tier. You know, it's right up there to me, you know, with the Prince or the Michael Jackson or the Madonna halftime show. You know, those were great shows. You know, the dynamic of those were great. You remember those. This one, it was just, it's about a medium, right? It's a medium for me. I just felt there was more they could have done. But not a knock on Rihanna. I enjoyed the playlist. You know, I tapped my foot along with the songs. It wasn't bad. It's just I wanted more. And that's just all it is. All right, guys. I appreciate everybody joining us on the show tonight. And, of course, our guests, thank you so much. And, of course, once again, wish Titan Upload could have made it in on the show. So my apologies for that. But he had a family matter. So we wish the best for that. And hopefully we'll get him back on soon. So No problem, no worries. But as of course, I thank you all for your involvement and all your support. So for you guys, the fans, for you, thank you so much. You have made this season so amazing. We've got a lot coming up, and I really, really, really got a lot to talk about, especially once we come back. So Al joining in on the show. Super Bowl's over, so now we can get to work building our team. That's the goal, Al. And I mean, we're not going to be short on some ideas, but realistically, I do think there's going to be a lot of tough decisions to make. And I promise y'all, it's going to be a tough road, but sometimes if you can just get the little things right and you just keep a positive mind and attitude about it, things tend to work out. And I really hope that that's the situation going forward. Lou Man giving Joe Buck a shout out. I don't see a lot of that, but I like Joe Buck's voice. And I mean, that's just me. I've never had a problem with Joe Buck. I think he does well. I just think he just doesn't emote like some people want him to. Maybe that's it, Lou Man, but that's just my take. And as always, shout out to Mom. Love you, mean it. And we hope you all have a great week too. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on the show. I will be off next week. I have been working nonstop, so I'm just going to take some time off for myself and just get some ducks lined up in a row. As I said, we're getting ready for the off season. There's a lot to be done. And with the Titan Upload Network, we've got a lot of work to do, so we're not going to waste any time. So believe me, I'll come back refreshed, rejuvenated, and ready to go to work and give you a better show experience. So thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. And as always, we'll see you next week. And as we say, I'm Michael Bishop of the Power Hour. Take care and tighten up.
Thank you for watching this live presentation of the Titan Upload Network.